Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. Happy Friday. I have a couple of reviews coming up for you, so hopefully you'll check into that. Now, the video I have here is for a game that originally came out on the Nintendo 64. Of course, I didn't have one back in the 90s or the 2000s for that matter. And eventually I saw last year a re-release for the Nintendo Switch. I'm having a hard time saying the word Nintendo in case you can't tell. Anyway, this particular game I've seen with many a different title. It's one that confused me a lot when I saw it last year at a Walmart in a dual pack, a combo pack with another game that I'd never played before and always wanted to. Anyway, the game here apparently is called Star Wars Racer for Nintendo Switch. Now, I've heard it with two other titles. I've heard it with Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. I've heard it with Star Wars Episode 1 Pod Racer, as the pod racing is called. And, of course, it's a racing game that also happened to come with a first-person shooter called Republic Commando, which is really good from what I've played of it so far. I played through like one level of it. Reminds me a lot of Halo. It's very interesting. But anyway, I'm a big Star Wars guy, as many of you know, but the racer game here confused me when I saw it last year in Walmart and told my wife I'd like that for Valentine's Day last year. She ended up getting it for me. Here I am, finally getting around to playing it and reviewing it. I've played it off and on because it stressed me out a lot. It's probably the fastest racing game I think I've ever played, honestly. Probably. I don't know. But it stressed me out a lot, so I would play a couple of races, maybe even 3 at maximum, and then I would take like a week off, and then I would have 2 weeks where I'd be playing something else, like Destroy All Humans or Gears of War, to review that for this channel, and I'd have to take a break, because I was too stressed out by how insane and crazy this game was. I can only imagine what it was like playing this on the 64 back in the day. But the reason it confused me so much was because I was confusing it with its sequel that I played and grew up on all the time, and I thought was the only one of its games. Of course, Episode 1 Racer, or Star Wars Racer, is based on Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, one of my favorite Star Wars movies. I know, it's blasphemy, but it's true. Now, I always grew up on its sequel called Star Wars Racer Revenge, which is based more on Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, which I also love quite a bit. I'm a big fan of the original 6 movies, what can I tell you? But I don't think Racer Revenge ever came out on Nintendo consoles, which is kind of surprising to me. But the OG I never played, until I played it on the Switch. If I haven't already said that, I wanted to make sure you knew about it. As I said, probably the fastest racing game I've ever played. It is a racing game. You start out, you can pick out what character you want to play as, whether it be Anakin, Sebulba, whoever that you saw in the original Phantom Menace pod racing scene. You pick from those people, and maybe 1 or 2 other people I don't know about. I don't know. I played as Anakin because I love Anakin. I love the racing blue and gray stripes on his pod, you know. Now, when you play with the pod racer that you pick, you get their particular machine. For example, if you pick Sebulba, you get the orange one, the big old orange pod you drove, or that he drove in that movie. Now, you can't really customize them that much. Like, it has customization for internal stuff, like how fast your machine can go, the braking, the repairs. You can hire a little droid to repair your machine while you're driving. You can do all that, but you can't really customize like the outside and change like the color and the paint scheme or the drawings or graffiti or whatever on the side of your machine. Your pod racer can't be customized that much, which is kind of a shame. Probably a marketing thing. Of course, this is one of the many games that tied into Phantom Menace, probably with one of my other favorite racing games of all time, Super Bombad Racing, which is a Star Wars game based on Episode 1. And you have other games like Jedi Power Battles, Phantom Menace movie game, all of that stuff, man. I loved every single game that came out of this movie, basically. So I'm a hardcore Star Wars fan, and typically I'm not hard to please when it comes to that. Disney has completely underwhelmed me in so many ways when it comes to comic books, anything. Movies, games, so many things. But to go back and play something like this, or to read an old comic that I hadn't read before or played before or anything, seen a movie or whatever, that I haven't experienced that's Star Wars themed, it's always a good surprise, and this is a great surprise, man. Star Wars Racer, Episode 1 Racer, Episode 1 Pod Racer, whatever the hell this thing is called, it is so good. It's a phenomenal game. I recommend it to every single person out there who has not played this before, even though the graphics are not like a remake graphics. This is not remade, by the way. This is a re-release of the original game for 64, so the graphics are kind of like stretched polygons and that kind of thing. But when you take the charm of the view of all of that, even though some of the maps are kind of hard to navigate because of some of the graphics just being basically copy and pasted from the 64 to the Switch, it's still super fun. It's still super engaging. It's still one of my favorite games I've ever played in my entire life. It's probably pretty much perfect aside from a couple of flaws that I have that I'll get to in a moment. But the racing tracks that you start out as amateur and you eventually go into pro, All of that stuff is phenomenal, except for one, called Abyss. If you've ever heard of anybody talk about this game anywhere on the internet, they've probably brought up the one track in the final 4 races called Abyss. Abyss is some bullshit. It is some bullshit. There is no way to beat that race, and if you have, you are an absolute Master League dude who is the best racing game, Star Wars racer, whatever, ever. You rule, I do not. I could not beat that race to save my life. Couldn't even complete the damn thing because of how ridiculous that track design is. And if you mess up one time, you're done. And that's the thing with this game too. If you mess up in the game and you hit a wall the wrong way, you're done. It's gonna blow up, you killed a child, and poor Jake Lloyd, who's playing Anakin here too, screams at the top of his lungs. So every time that I wrecked my pod racer in this racing game, I got to hear a small human boy, scream his lungs out. It was awful. It was awful in that regard. And after a while, it starts to agitate you more and more that you just start to get frustrated. Now, the racing themselves, I really love all of that. Yeah, there's some sharp turns. That's a little more tricky the further the game goes on. You can probably beat the game in less than 5 hours. I sucked at it. It took me a long time to get used to it, especially because you use the trigger buttons on the Switch's controllers to, like the equivalent of the R2 and L2 on the PlayStation controller, to hit gas and brake. Now, you have other button setups you can use, like classical setting, which I did not like. I refused to use that, so I didn't use it. But everything else on this I loved. I thought it was so good, so fun, aside from Abyss and the control scheme. But I feel like there's something else I'm missing here. Oh yeah, the John Williams music, dude. The John Williams music. Oh my god, it is perfect on this. Like, I love the Duel of the Fates song. I think it's one of the best orchestral songs ever made. But to have that in this racing game, dude, it's stressful. You know what I mean? It's stressful. By the way, some of these tracks can be done in like maybe less than 5-6 minutes. Some of them go on to like 10 minutes because of the 3 laps you have to do per race, which, depending on the lap, depending on the track and how long it can be, you can get a little mad about that, just so you know. With all that being said, though, this is a wonderful game. I love the charm of the graphics. I love that it wasn't a remake, even though I would love a remake, by the way. I think there is some kind of fan remake of some sort somewhere on the internet, some kind of mod. I don't know. I don't play on PC. But this game was wonderful. I recommend it highly. If you have not picked this up for the Nintendo Switch, you need to do it. It is wonderful, and eventually you should play the sequel that I grew up on as well, because this is really good if you can get your hands on it. From what I remember, it's been a long time. It's been over 10 years since I played Racer Revenge. But anyway, if I had to rate Star Wars Racer, Episode 1 Racer, Episode 1 Pod Racer, whatever this is called and referred to typically nowadays, on a 5-star basis, I think I would easily give this a 5 out of 5 stars. Yeah, I think Abyss is some bullshit, but 5 out of 5 stars, dude. Nonetheless, it is wonderful. It is a perfect racing game, essentially. I love it. It's incredible, and if you haven't played it, you are missing out, my dude. Eventually, I can't wait to get around to talking about that Republic Commando game. It's awesome. As an FPS, it's really good. It plays well. Can't wait to play it more. Anyway, what are your thoughts on Star Wars, Pod Racer, Racer, whatever this thing is called? Put it down in the comment section down below. Did you play this on the 64, or are you like me and just played it exclusively on the Switch? I'd love to hear all that down below, too. Anyway, thank you all. God bless you. Goodbye.